My fellow world citizens, the real motives and means of the 9/11 2001 attack against the United States of America. That is the $64 million question. What is the real motive of attacking USA and destructing the World Trade Center and the Pentagon? And that didn't stop there. After 9/11, despite all heightened security, heightened consciousness of all the people, USA has been plagued with massacres, suicide killings, and then closing of the Statue of Liberty to rewrite American history, changing the revolution back to British monarchy. And so many things have been happening inside USA which are directly linked with the motives of the 9/11. Like even the Deepwater Horizon explosion, depriving USA from so much oil reserve under the ocean. Under the British Petroleum, not so many good oil and natural gas company inside USA. USA was the pioneer, but that order was given to British Petroleum. So the question is, what was the motive behind 9/11 and how many people, how many organizations, how many think tanks, how many political scientists were involved with that motive? Bin Laden certainly had no motive and no means. Like God had no means too. Only the Anglican God, who is the Queen of England, had all the means to re-annex the United States of America militarily as well. And that didn't happen just in one day. Systematic knighting of the military brasses, presidents, high political leaders, think tanks, news media, and industrialists since the Second World War. And step by step, and then also very consciously eliminating real good American military leaders with the DC Arrowware 8 explosion from Newfoundland. 248 of them were killed in one day as they were coming back from the Egyptian war. So thus, American patriots inside the military had been eliminated. That started with the Israeli bombing of the USS Liberty, killing 34, wounding 171. And for that, Israel was not punished. And even President Johnson didn't do any investigation. Media was completely quiet. Same was true for the Arrowware, 248 US Marines killed in one plane. All the good officers and the peace lovers. And they were all taken away in one shot, right in Newfoundland, the former enemy state. So, now let's see what really happened. How 9/11 really happened. How and why 9/11 type well-planned, precisely implemented military coup, false flag operation was possible inside USA in broad daylight, hijacking Boeing jets remotely, NASA tested drones flying, using FAA implemented WAAS, LAS, WAAS, LAAS technology to hit DGPS programmed sovereign US targets. 9/11 motives and means. The Newcon's document, Project for the American Century, PNAC, argued in rebuilding America's defense, quote, creating tomorrow's dominant force. The process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. We all know how Pearl Harbor took USA to World War II. Most signatories of the project of the new American century were either members of the Bush administration or Pentagon, as follows: Donald Rumsfeld, Vin Weber, George Weigel, Paul Wolfowitz, Elliot Abrams, Gary Bauer, William J. Bennett, Jeb Bush, Dick Cheney, Elliot A. Cohen, Mitch Decter, Paula Dobransky, Steve Forbes, Aaron Friedberg, Francis Fukuyama, Frank Giffney, Fred C. Ickel, Donald Kagan, Jalme Khalijat, I. Louis Libby, Norman Podhoretz, Dan Quayle, Peter W. Rodman, Stephen P. Rosen, Henry S. Rowan. Thus, 9/11 was a requirement for re-establishing American supremacy throughout the world, as viewed by this group of people. Now the first question is, why there is a virtual enemy Al-Qaeda? In 1998, Pentagon started a project called Able Danger to hire, train and set up worldwide patsies to cover up for the real crimes of a handful of high-level terrorists sitting at the top of money, power and fame in order to colonize world resources while abusing and enslaving natives. And again the question is why? Because Samuel Huntington, in his much publicized book Clash of Civilization, suggested that West needs common enemy which both Europeans and Americans can hate to justify military colonization of the world resources while imposing Western enslaving values to sustain domination. That is Dr. Samuel Huntington, supposed to be a political scientist for both Europe and America, and Zbigniew Brzezinski, modern father of Zionism and Al-Qaeda. Quote, moreover, as America becomes an increasingly multicultural society, it may find it more difficult to fashion a consensus on foreign policy issues, except in the circumstance of a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat. Unquote. Now the question is, what kind of foreign policy issues needs a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat? Is it Nazism, Zionism, and eugenism? Mr. Brzezinski, this is 21st century. You forgot. Now listen to David Rockefeller, the American godfather, who is in charge of many things despite millions of Americans are there. He is the ex-chairman of Bilderberg, current advisor. He is in Trilateral Commission. He is the founder of Club of Rome, and he is an honorary chairman of CFR, Council of Foreign Relations. All covert entities. Now let us hear David Rockefeller, quote, we are grateful to Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications, whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. June 1991, quote in Bilderberg, Berlin, Germany. He went on to explain, quote, it would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years. But the world is more sophisticated and prepared to march towards a world government The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national autodetermination practiced in past centuries, unquote. So, Mr. Rockefeller, where are the people? Where are the votes? Where is the democracy? And again, quote, we are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order. Source: David Rockefeller, September 14, 1994, at the United Nations Conference. What kind of good world order can come out of a major crisis? And why David Rockefeller would want to have a major crisis, like Mr. Zbigniew Brzezinski, who wanted to have a truly massive and widely perceived direct external threat, and like Dr. Samuel Huntington, who needed a common enemy which both Europeans and Americans can hate. Thus, America and American media had been neglecting all the signs of real enemy inside the country who were vouching for less sovereign America, less democratic America, for a new world order of few bankers and elites. And now imagine David Rockefeller used his power to negotiate the deal to transfer World Trade Center ownership from New York, New Jersey Port Authority to Silverstein Properties and Westfield America, so that WTC can be wired for demolitions by experts with minimum security under a monarchical security firm from Kuwait, Securacom, where Jeb Bush used to be a board of director, which also oversaw all 9/11 related airports for setting up patsies. The new owners, Larry Silverstein, profited $4+ billion from insurance they bought to cover World Trade Center. In April 2001, former Secretary of State James Baker III concluded in a report, Strategic Energy Policy Challenges, that, quote, Iraq remains a destabilizing influence to the flow of oil to international markets from the Middle East. And because this is an unacceptable risk to the US, military intervention is necessary. So the attack on Iraq has been planned already, before 9/11 attack. One more quote, if we let our vision of the world go forth, and we embrace it entirely, and we don't try to piece together clever diplomacy, but just wage total war, our children will sing great songs about us years from now, unquote. Richard Parley is a resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. He served as Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Policy from 1981 to 1987, and afterwards as a member of the Defense Policy Board, including 3 years as chairman. He is also the director of the Jerusalem Post. Now question is, Mr. Richard Parley, who are us? Last but not least, US Christian fundamentalist leader Jerry Falwell's view against American democratic sovereignty. Quote, there is nothing that would bring the wrath of the Christian public in this country down on this government like abandoning or opposing Israel in a critical matter, unquote. And the most interesting thing is, Bush administration, led by Colin Powell, was going to announce in the United Nations on September 13, 2001, Palestinian statehood, which would bring the wrath of all Zion's Christian soldiers down on America. Now wonder why American military, US Air Force and NORAD, which became very evangelic, with their structure even, even the structure of the building that looked like a church now. They preponed their yearly military exercise from end of October to the week of 9/11, 2001. Why? Running all the war games. That also included hitting Pentagon and World Trade Center by Boeing jets as simulations, but they became real on that day, using Pentagon's red team that came via Saudi Arabia. How? CIA warned in July, August, 100% chance of hitting America by Al-Qaeda. Yet, State Department of USA started a Visa Express in Saudi Arabia, where the person didn't have to come to show his face or the picture and got a visa by mail. That's how they came into the country, as the Pentagon's red team and may as well as the World Trade Center demolishers, and then flown away outside the country on the day of 9/11, 2001, when all the other airlines was down. From Florida, in the middle of the night, this lone plane took them back to Saudi Arabia. And this is the main motive of 9/11. 9/11 was a military coup in broad daylight, supported by multi-country, multi-intelligence, multi-country military to empower NATO and for a better North Atlantic relationship, making USA less sovereign, less democratic in every which way, so that they can make an imperial federation, destroying United Nations as we know, and making it an instrument for their imperial federation. That was the real motive against 9/11 attack against the United States of America. God bless America. God bless all citizens. God bless our democratic world.